Hey everybody, it is Tuesday. It is time for Ahysen Nation. We're so excited that you are here today. Probably the most anticipated show that I have ever done because of the guest, the topic. I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity for the first time, and indeed I am. I'm going to pan the camera over and introduce you to somebody that I know you already know, Mr. Woody Overton. Woody, hey, thanks for coming in.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Johnny.
This is so exciting. If you don't know Woody, you will after this program. And I'm just going to dive right in. I have so many notes. I went to your event recently, and we'll talk. You're not going to understand everything right off the bat, but we're going to get into that. You're in law enforcement, and that's your background, but you have an ebook here, and it's called Jesus Held Me. And I read this book, and Woody, it took me all over the place.
Right.
It is a real life story of a big, important section of your life.
Right.
So in 2001, you had a head injury on the job, and
Right.
that ended up being, you ignored it.
Right.
And that ended up being 20 weeks later, he finally gets healed from what was misdiagnosed as a concussion in a brain. Tell me about that particular injury.
I went in originally, and they took x-rays or whatever they did, CAT scan, and said there was nothing wrong, might have a mild concussion. And then as time went on, the week or so went on, it got worse. I couldn't get out of bed, etc. And I finally go to a doctor friend of mine. He was like, no, we got to get you in for an MRI. Then it was like 2 weeks before they could get me in for the MRI, and I go in. Turned out I had a fractured skull, and I had 2 subdural hematomas on my brain. And they wanted to do surgery and all this immediately. I'm like, man, I've been out this long, I don't want you to crack my skull, right? And so basically being this, the hematoma either was going to continue to get worse and have to do it, or over time the brain would reabsorb the injury, and that's what ended up happening. So I was out for a long, long time.
Yeah, that ended up being, what'd you say in your book, a 20-week ordeal?
It was a lot. The good thing is I don't remember most of it.
All right, now fast forward me. That was 01.
Right.
You and Cindy, your lovely wife, were sitting on the couch on a Monday after Easter. What year was that? Do you remember?
That was 2009.
2009.
Right.
And everything was fine, and then you started feeling pain and something coming up, and you felt a bump or a knot or something coming up in the back of your head. led to severe pain.
Right.
And that led to the beginning of a rabbit hole that I cannot even imagine. When I was reading about it, I'm like, this cannot be a real story.
Yeah.
And it is every bit a real story. And do you, before we get into that story, do you think your brain concussion from '01 contributed to that? Have you ever heard that?
I don't see how it couldn't have. I was always healthy. Didn't go to the doctor, especially after '01. The doctors, not knocking doctors, I'm sure there's good.
Woody's not a doctor fan.
Good and bad in every profession, right? But I don't know, Johnny, but for whatever reason, it happened. Maybe just to humble me some, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. It's a life lesson that I cannot believe you had to endure and go through. So, so you go to these doctors, and one of the first things they did was try to knock your pain down with an injection of
Dilaudid.
Dilaudid,
yes.
And you had an allergic reaction to Dilaudid that almost killed you.
Yeah, pretty much did kill me. I actually felt when they injected it, my whole body seized up. I could feel it as it was running through my veins. Everything just seized down, and it spread, and when it hit my heart, it just locked down all the way down to my feet and my toes. I had sandals on. I was in the emergency room, actually on the table, and my toes locked down, and then my throat constricted. I couldn't breathe.
And they didn't think it was they didn't believe you.
They thought I was having a panic attack.
I remember the book saying that.
That was proven later on after they couldn't diagnose me with what I had, and I was in the hospital for several weeks, and the best neurologists, neurologists couldn't do it. But they tried to give me Dilaudid again, and I was like, no, you can't give that to me. And they were like, oh no, just turn your head, you won't even know it. I'm gonna push it real slow. And then as soon as she started to push, I was like, I was seizing up again in my arm. She's like, I just didn't even give you barely a drop. I said, I'm telling you. And she said, well, you're definitely allergic to it.
Why don't, and I've got some great doctors in my own personal life, and they're fantastic, but some doctors won't listen to their patients. Is that ego? I guess it is a little bit.
I don't know. I know at a certain point after what I was diagnosed with and being on all the pain management and the neurological medicines, when I was so out the box mentally and physically, and I had to go back in and didn't even get to see the regular pain medicine. I hate pain medicine, by the way. I can't stand it. I want to take an aspirin, but go back in to see the original pain management doctor, and he's not there. That's because I was having these hallucinations, etc. But and I go in, and the other thing they kept doing, they could never find my veins, right? And so I go in, this doctor's like, he's a junkie. I'm like, and meanwhile, I'm still having hallucinations in his presence and what have you. It's just a bad time.
That's just crazy. And your little Southern Belle wife lost it.
Oh yeah, she told me. Yeah, you don't want that pistol going off.
My goodness gracious. So describe the pain. You had pain that was 24/7, and it wouldn't go away. You have a high tolerance for pain.
Right.
You always have.
It ended up being diagnosed as trigeminal neuralgia, which is more commonly referred to as a suicide disease. And most people, like 95% of the people that get it, only get it on one side of their head. I had it on both sides, so mine was double. And I couldn't be in a room with lights, smells, anything. I was just crippled. I was an invalid, basically. And they kept me so doped up between morphine. Every couple of hours, it was a different type of pain medicine on top of the neurological medicines, etc.
That is absolutely nuts. Did the diagnosis of
trigeminal neuralgia?
At the end of the proverbial day, was it really that, or was it the tumor?
Well, it was the tumor that was causing the trigeminal neuralgia.
So the tumor caused that.
But everybody missed the tumor. Now, I've been to all the best neurologists in the world, and I had 8 weeks. I think it was 5 or 8 weeks left, and I was going to Boston. I was going to let them paralyze me because I couldn't take it. So they were going to paralyze, cut all the nerves in my face, and they just swore it was trigeminal neuralgia. I kept telling them the whole time about that bump. No, that's a fatty lipoma. It's been there forever. I'm like, dude, I felt it when it came up. That's what this all started, and that's how it all ended ultimately.
How did you get in touch with it? Was it Dr. Surek?
Dr. Surek was
that's
right. The night they let me out when they shot, I first had the allergic reaction to Dilaudid. Told me to go home. There was nothing wrong with me, And I'm like,
Panic attack.
but and that was a fatty lipoma on the back of my head. And go see an ENT the next day. So it was Dr. Surik that went and saw in Zachary, Louisiana, and he was a guy. He was just a pure godsend. But he immediately put me in the hospital and turned me over to neurology, et cetera. And for over 2 weeks, nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And he comes in on a Saturday in his golf clothes. He said, "Well, I just literally came from the golf course." He was a deacon. I think he was a deacon in the Catholic Church or something. But he said, I was on the golf course, and I hadn't seen him in weeks. And he said, "God told me what it is you have." He said, "You have trigeminal neuralgia." And he conferred with all the neurologists, and that's what they decided I had.
That is amazing. So there's a parallel story to this that is a very spiritual story, a very moving story, and as a Christian, it really touched me. I read it 2 or 3 times. Before all of this happened, and I think even before your head wound in 2001, you were working at a prison or a detention center or something?
I was a supervisor at a juvenile detention center. Yeah.
And these were, some of the hard
definitely
young people.
Definitely not a hug a thug program.
Rapes
right. It was they were, if they were locked up, it was for murder, rape, armed robbery, something like that.
So every Sunday, there was a pastor from the Church of God of Prophecy in Hammond, Pastor Shirley Vicks.
Pastor Shirley Vicks.
African-American pastor, I believe, right?
That's right. The lady.
She would come in and she would conduct a service.
That's correct.
Okay. But she comes in, sees you, pulls you aside, never meeting you before, and
never forget it.
Go from there.
She said, "Brother, man, I talked to you for a second." And I always believe in God and everything, but I was like, okay, whatever. And she pulls me aside and she said, "God has something for me to tell you." I said, "Okay." She said, "Are you prepared to hear it?" I said, "Yeah." And she told me, and what she told me, nobody else in the world would know. And she said, "God said, don't give up on him." And it freaked me out because there's nobody in the world that knew what she told me. And I was like, from that point on, I started going to church with her, and I was, I don't know how politically correct to say it is or whatever. I was the only white male in the African-American church. I got rebaptized in '98. But, I don't have Johnny, I don't have a religion. I have a relationship now. And I'm certainly not any kind of preacher. And everybody out there screaming their nose, Woody Overton's like, "Oh, I can't believe he's talking about God," right? But I'm the biggest sinner probably in this area, but I love Jesus.
But that relationship that you were really, you were born and raised like me, Catholic,
right.
And we're taught, Catholicism and CCD and catechism and all of that.
Right.
But you really had a one-on-one relationship with Jesus when you were getting this dilatant, dilated, and everything started to seize up. You cried out.
I cried out. I always wondered if my high-risk victims, my homicide victims, like the drug dealers or prostitutes, whatever, when they got murdered, I wondered if they called out at the last second, Jesus would ever come to them. Well, certainly I'm a sinner, but when I was dying, I was dying. I know I was dying, and I called out to him because the pain was the most excruciating thing. It was way beyond that. I'm talking about when I was having the allergic reaction, and I called out to him, and I felt him. I felt a presence hold me from underneath my arms. I was laying on the table, and he said, I heard the voice say, "I've got you." And where he was touching me, it was pure, beyond the most imaginable. I can't never begin to describe it correctly, the love and everything that I felt. And I said, the pain, in my mind, I said, the pain, he said, "It's yours to bear from now." And so I thought I was dying. My wife was there. She was like 5.5 months pregnant. And I was able to get it. I said, "Baby, it's okay." I was crying. I said, "Baby, it's okay. Jesus is here. I'm going with him now." And she said, "No, it's not okay." It jumps on top of me, and I lost the connection. But
Holy cow! Are you afraid of dying?
Not now. I'm one of the richest people on the face of this earth because I always believed, but now I know it's for real. But I'm gonna tell you something. Hell's real too. Evil's real. And I know that from my career as well. So I'm not afraid. I want to see my kids grow up and live a long and prosperous life. But whenever God wants to call me home, He can call me. Because you better believe I'm a sinner, but I'm praying all day. Yeah, I don't want to get caught in that state of non-grace.
You started going to Pastor Vic's church, small church, very small congregation, and you felt, she addressed you at one point in one of the services, and you came down to the front, and something happened to you, and you don't have a full recollection of it, but what you do recall of it was very, very spiritual and very good. Tell me about that and what others said you did and said.
That was actually, I would travel with her, like during the week. I mean, I was 1,000% in, right? And the, I guess I was getting so much out of it, but we were actually in Plaquemine. She was a guest pastor at a church over there, and she called me down and asked me, had I ever received the Holy Spirit? Well, being raised Catholic, I mean, I'd been to all the services, I'd seen the people speaking in tongues and all this stuff, and I didn't believe or disbelieve it one way or another. But anyway, she called me down, and they ended up doing what they say, lay hands on me, and I literally like blacked out. But they tell me afterwards that I was speaking in tongues, basically unrecognizable language, etc. And when I got done, it was just like, and always though, even going to the church ceremonies back then, I would feel certain peace, like my mama gets from going to mass, right? I found I was having that every time I'd leave a service, but after this, I felt really blessed. I don't know how to explain it.
Wow. Why do you think other people, other Christians, don't experience Jesus that real?
I don't know.
And why do you think you
Maybe
did?
they're not ready for it, and maybe God was preparing me for the battles and the evil I was going to face in the future. I don't know.
Holy cow. All right, I want to move on to continue the story because I definitely want to get into the real life real crime. But the story in the book was so fascinating, and
I
it took me
appreciate that.
everywhere.
And
everywhere.
I didn't write that until several years after it happened. There, a retired trooper, Mary Landry, had come back. He was a criminal investigator, and he's really religious. And I had told him the story, and he kept getting me to tell old troopers, these old hard troopers. I was at headquarters in Baton Rouge. He had my outer office, and they'd come in and he said, "Man, you got to go hear Woody's story." So I would tell me, he kept saying, "Man, you need to write that. You need to write that. The devil's going to block you from it." I'm like, "I'm not writing it." And finally, I did write it. It was several years later, and then I've also narrated this on Audible. It's a real short book. I'll tell you.
Oh, I read. I'm a horrible reader, and I read it in one sitting, but I couldn't put it down. But you would give me the story's real, but the way you write, it's like I had no clue what was about to happen next, and you go, "Oh my God, I can't go to sleep right now."
Yeah.
But so in the book, and I even wrote some of these down: OxyContin, Demerol, Loratab, Percocet. This trigeal neuralgia was so painful, as he said, was the suicide disease, because people that couldn't take that pain, and there's no cure for it.
No, most of the people that get it kill themselves. It's a fact.
And there's no cure.
No cure.
And pain management is from a 10 to a 7 at best.
Right, and the flipping of all those different medicines, I forget which one. It's OxyContin, and then one like a Loratab, and then it's morphine, and whatever the opposites are. I mean, but man, I hate it. I'm like, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to take it. But man, I can tell you exactly to the minute when it started wearing off, because the pain was coming back. And then on top of that, it was all the neurological drugs. They had me on Neurontin and all this stuff, and I hated it. Hated every minute of it.
Well, you talk in the book about hallucinations, and you talk about 3 different kind of hallucinations. One where demons were like right there in your face, and you would run out in the yard, and they would be chasing you, and you would hold the crucifix that you owned in the Bible, and
saw them just like I'm seeing you now. And other hallucinations. The one that got me sent back to the doctor, my dad had stopped by, and I was sitting up in bed. It was the middle of the daytime, and I was reliving a murder trial, like I was on the stand testifying. And he said it scared him so bad, he was like, "We got to get him to the doctor. This is not normal."
yeah, but then there were other stories where you went outside and talked to birds. Do you know how crazy that sounds?
It all happened.
And birds talk to you.
Yep. I was in a special
That
place.
sounds like bipolar or schizophrenia.
Hey, I saw the demons. I smelt them. I felt them. I mean, it was bad stuff.
But these were hallucinations from the medications.
Right.
That's nuts.
I haven't seen them since.
Okay. I was like, okay, who are you seeing and who is this right now?
No.
Getting scared. So you're on all of these hallucinogenic type meds to control your pain, and then you finally go to, you're scheduled to go to Boston to have nerves actually severed
Right.
that would cause you paralysis in hopes of, and it wasn't even 100%,
That's right.
helping your pain management.
That's right.
So that's how desperate you were.
Right.
And you were going to be completely, no more fishing,
No.
completely
And then I was about to have a
disabled.
baby boy. And I wouldn't have been able to speak anything. My whole face would have been paralyzed. And they said the best I could hope to be was basically an invalid. But the long and the short of it was, I went back to Dr. Surik, and who hadn't been my doctor in months now. And I said, hey, doc, I want you to take this bump out of my head. And he said, no. He said, man, you're so messed up. And he said, that's still a major surgery. You have to have a couple stitches or staples or whatever put in. And I said, I'm begging you.
And at this time, he still even thought it was small.
Right.
Okay.
And I said, I'm begging you, take it out. And he was like, okay, you want to do it? It'll be 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll do the surgery. And when I woke up in the ICU, he's there and he's smiling. And he's like, you did real good or whatever. And I don't really remember. Now, I didn't have him put me under, because for some reason I didn't want to be underneath the anesthesia. I said, there's just some way you can deaden or whatever. But I remember tugging.
Fearful of those visions coming back.
Yeah. I maybe that's what it was. Even though now I'm not afraid to die, but when I woke up, he's smiling. And then I wake up again, I'm in the room with my wife and my parents, and they're all happy. And I'm like, what's the deal? They said, Dr. Surik didn't tell you? I said, no. They said, well, he went in to cut out that little bitty bump, and he ended up having to open it up and open it up and open it up. He said they scraped a softball-sized tumor off the back of my head that I must have had 20 MRIs and CAT scans and all the different neurologists, and everybody missed it. So he scraped that softball tumor off the back of my head, and then it really was a major surgery, so I stayed in the hospital for a while for that, but then I got out. But the one thing I never had again was any more trigeminal pain. So what I did on my own before Boston was wean myself off, which was that was almost as bad, weaning myself off all these pain meds and everything. My wife was the only one that knew it. And then, but I mean, that was, going through those withdrawals and everything was just, I mean, like you see in the movies, the puking, the whole 9 yards. But in the end, I knew I was cured. I had no more trigeminal neuralgia, and I never went to Boston, and I went back to work.
What is the time frame from that Monday on the couch when the bump started to develop to the time when you had the surgery? And how long?
I think it was
like
3 months or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
Oh my heavens.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy.
That is nuts. I just couldn't believe this. If you don't have an opportunity, you got it's an ebook. It's easy to read.
I've narrated it also. It's on Audible.
There you go.
And it's almost free. I don't charge hardly anything for it. It's about the story, right? I'm not making money off of that, I can assure you.
I got to tell you, I think every person in the medical industry anywhere within my voice should read this book, and any person that is borderline questioning their faith should read that book.
Yeah, the funny thing about it is, as the podcast has grown, I've never promoted, I've never gone out and said, ooh, the book.
Well, that's why I asked you, is there anything off limits? Because I didn't want to make this
a
churchy type of thing.
I'll tell you the truth. But as the podcast has grown and the listenership has grown, I guess people have researched me and they found the book, and then they buy it, and then they come back and are like, oh my God, this is like the old cops. When Murray used to send them in, it would be, some of them would cry, some of them would just break down, whatever. I'm like, you don't know, I needed to hear that for whatever. So if somebody gets something out of it, then I'm good with that,
Oh, well, this reader got something out of it, I'll tell you right now. So I was introduced to your podcast by a very dear friend of mine, Kim Barnett.
Yeah.
Kim Barnett spent many years at DOC, Department of Corrections, in the education side, and she has a consulting business to this day where she travels and things like that. A lot of times she'll travel by car, and she listens to your podcast. Yeah. So we were traveling recently, and she said...
Thanks, Kim.
There you go. A shout out from the man, Kim. So she says, have you ever heard of Woody Overton? And I heard of your family. you know. And I said, well, I know the Overton family. And she goes, no, no, no. Have you ever heard of the podcast Real Life, Real Crime? And I'm like, no, I mean, I don't watch NCIS. I don't really get into that. I'm in the news industry, and I hear these stories all the time, and they upset me. So she says, I want you to hear a podcast. And we were on a trip. I was a captive audience, and she started playing it, and I'm like, Kim, I'm not going to, this redneck from, I'm not going to, and I mean, I really did. And she laughed, and she goes, give me one episode.
Yeah.
And the episode that she played for me, the very first one, was an episode called I Shot That Man. And then there was a 2-part episode that tied that all in together, and it was like, I couldn't quit listening.
I appreciate it.
I couldn't quit listening, and I'm thinking, holy cow. And now you are, you know, you've won multiple awards for podcasting. iHeartRadio's picked you up now, and things like that. You have been able to retire your lovely wife, Cindy, to do this full time.
That's right.
I mean, the Lord has definitely blessed you with this podcast, but you tell it like it is.
Yeah.
How did you get into doing the podcast where you're talking about real cases?
Pure accident. And it goes back to Cindy. It was a hot weekend during hunting season. And, you know, when I retired from law enforcement from the state police, I became certified as an expert witness in all U.S. federal courts and law enforcement matters. So I would travel the country and do defense work. And I'm a state licensed and board certified polygraphist. I would travel the country and do that. So I was hardly ever home. But when I was during hunting season, I stayed at the hunting cabin, right? But it was a hot weekend, and so I called her and said, hey, I'm going to come take you to the coast for the weekend, pick her up on the way out of the parish. I'm passing somewhere, and I start telling a story about a homicide or something. I worked at some location, and she said, everybody loves your voice, everybody loves your stories, you need to start a podcast. I honestly had never heard the word before. I didn't know what a podcast was, and I don't listen to the radio when I drive the car or anything like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, I'm telling you, you need to start a podcast. I said, well, put on the best in the world, true crime. And she looked them up, put them on, and I was like, this is boring, man. These people reading stuff they've researched off the internet. Give me another one. She did it again, and we listened to numerous ones I attempted to. And I'm like, I can't listen to this. This bores me to tears. I said, they want to hear a story, I'll tell a story. And I put out the first one, and I always say I shouldn't have put out the first one I did because it was such a hardcore story, but you know what? It's real life and real crime. And that guy's got 4 life sentences now for his crimes, but put it out and it went viral. I mean, that's all. But I don't make any excuses. And when we go back to the Christian part or whatever, certainly, you know, I curse, but I give a warning before every episode that I say, you know, you're going to get offended, turn it off now, right? Because I'm about to lay it out for you. And I'm not politically correct. I don't make any apologies for it. I just tell everything that's in my memory. I very seldom use any type of notes or whatever, unless it's a large case that I have to go pull courtroom minutes on or something like that. And it just blew up.
Because I won't listen to the first one. I mean, Kim's listened to the first one, and she slept with lights on, and she was upset, and it was just disturbing because it's a real story. Give me 10 seconds so that they know what that story was about.
The story was about a guy who actually was a husband and wife team who were raping children. And his wife had been one of his first victims like 20 plus years before, but he got away with it for over 40 years. And I stumbled upon this case by accident, but the long and the short of it is, in 9 months, they weren't going to touch it. They didn't want to even prosecute it because it's mostly poor victims, etc. And I had like 20 or 30 victims, but I stood up for it in the grand jury, even when they told me not to, and I said exactly what the cases were. Then they came back, went for 4 aggravated rapes in 9 months. It took them longer to pick the jury foreman than it did to come back with the 4 guilty verdicts on the 4 charges that we went for, and he's doing 4 life sentences.
That's amazing.
To me, that's important. Right?
That's
He'll never touch another kid again. How about that? So.
That's amazing. I may listen to it one day, but I just can't.
Yeah, no, I don't blame it.
The way Kim explained it, I can't listen to it.
That's one that popped in my head. I said, they want to hear a real story? I'll tell them a real story. And so I don't go in, I never, Johnny, go into super graphic details, especially on sex cases and stuff like that. I don't do anything to sensationalize it. I try to dim it down as much as I can on the goriness and everything else, but I have to tell certain things because otherwise it wouldn't be a story.
I was going to say you do go into great detail, but you don't go into sensationalizing.
Right.
You just state the facts, and I think that's what makes it so much more powerful. Is you going, this really happened.
Yeah.
This isn't a science fiction here.
I think that the difference between me and everybody else is where they can research stuff and tell you about the crime scene from the outside, I actually get to bring you inside the crime scene tape. I get to tell you where I walked, what I saw, what I felt, what I smelled, what I did to get the confessions, how I worked the case, stuff like that, right? And again, 99% of it is not using notes and being just blunt, Woody Overton. So.
Oh, you're blunt, all right. He puts it out there, but again, he doesn't sensationalize. If you haven't heard the podcast, it's real life, real crime. Kim had a couple of questions. Many young adults who are deciding on what their career might be look up to you. A lot of the adults look up to you as well and admire what you guys have done and are doing. What advice would you give them as to training and experience to become a great detective like you? Like what line of study,
Right.
things like that? What would you say?
You know, that's a great question. And Johnny, a lot of people don't know, but I go to high schools all the time. And anybody that asks me to come and speak, especially to children, or I say children, young adults, I always do it, no matter how small the class or how big the class, and I just do it so I can talk to them. And I think that is, cops or law enforcement professionals, nurses and teachers or firemen, public service like that are some of the most underrated. But nowadays, to be in law enforcement, it's tough. 25 years ago, if I was getting beat down in the street, the people would have come out of their homes to help me. It's not that way now. And there's no more bad cops now than there were back then. It's now everything's on social media and everything's instant. But I would tell them, and I have a lot of, I can't call them my proteges. I can tell you some who graduated recently from Baton Rouge City are dear friends of mine, and I'll help walk them through the academy. And I used to be a field training officer, and then I trained detectives, and I've trained polygraphists. And so I think everybody should have to start out in corrections. And start out in corrections while you're going to college, and study criminal justice if you can. But starting out in corrections, you get to learn the mindset of the people that you're going to be dealing with in the future. And I think that gave me the criminal mind fascinates me, there's no doubt about it. But starting out in corrections gave me such a huge jump on what I was going to be dealing with, the type of people I was going to be dealing with in the future. And I started out at Angola and DCI, then a juvenile place, and then went into uniform patrol and then detectives and so on. But just stay the course. And I tell them that you may have to realize that it's not going to be for you. It's not everybody that wants to be a cop can't make it as a cop, or certainly as an investigator. There's different levels. So
that is just what. And you talked about Russell. Is it Russell Kiger?
Russell Kiger. And actually, I was in the hospital incapacitated. And the first time I turned on the television from the darkness, I wouldn't even let the cops come see me. Now, when the cop's in the hospital, all the cops are going to come take them. I wouldn't have visitors. I could have no visitors, nothing, because of the sensory pain. And the one time I turned on, I saw on the news, at 10 o'clock news, that Russ had died. And
dear friend.
Yeah, dear friend of mine in Baton Rouge City. But before that, I got to train him. I was his FTO, and
Well, you were a little badass growing up.
I was the original outlaw, right?
I'm telling you.
And
Bo and Luke Duke ain't got nothing on you.
That's right. And I was, and I make no bones about it. Everybody knows my history. All the people that I grew up with, right? And so my dad used to laugh and say, or he'd tell people, say, yeah, we thought, we're going to have to visit Woody behind bars, and now he puts people behind bars. And But I think that gave me a leg up on.
Well, that's where
being a
that's
good
where the
cop.
next question I was going to. Can you tell us about your background and what led from that little bad boy into being
I always wanted to be a cop. I always wanted to be
never fireman or an
military,
astronaut? Always wanted to be a cop.
military and law enforcement. Period. That's what I wanted to do.
And you did military.
I did, and Louisiana National Guard, and then worked my way into corrections and worked my way up. So.
And now you're probably the most brilliant. I can't say that word, but it's a polygraph person.
Polygraphist.
Yeah, that
polygraph.
almost sounds like a dirty word.
I always joke and say state license board certified polygraphist, not to be confused with polygamist, because I love my wife very much, but I don't want more than one of her. Right? She hates when I tell that joke. But
Can a polygraph test be beat?
sure, you can. Absolutely. Yeah. The polygraph is only as good as the examiner, and most examiners are not trained in what they call countermeasures. A countermeasure is a deliberate attempt on the part of the examinee to do something to alter the outcome of the test. It's either mental, physical, or narcotics. Most examiners only maybe have a day or so of the countermeasure courses. I was fortunate enough, being in law enforcement, to get to advanced anti-countermeasure courses and stuff like that. And I have all the websites, how to beat the polygraph, how to steam the polygraph, antipolygraph.org, et cetera, on my favorites page, and I read them every week. And they do have a lot of true and correct testing information, but the one thing they don't tell you is using a countermeasure never makes a guilty person look innocent. All it does is messes up the charts and makes them where they can't be scored, and you get a result of inconclusive. But if you're trained in them, the physiological responses you'll see on the screen, when you see those, you know the body can't produce these naturally. So most examiners don't have that training.
Now, when you have a suspect and you're about to do a polygraph test on them, do you go through the test questions before you start the
absolutely.
test? So there's no surprise in what they're going to be hit with?
Way before then. Let's say it's a murder polygraph or whatever. It could be for anything. I'm going to go in the room, and God's given me a gift to be able to read people, and that's like 98.5% of what I do, right? Some people you have to be a little authoritative on, some people submissive to, some people in between, some people need a friend. And I figure out what that person needs, and I mold my interview and my actions to that. And then that way, if they go deception indicated, or if they fail the test, everything's reviewed ahead of time, long ahead of time. But by the time we get done, I've bonded with them. If I have to tell them that you failed and I'm going for the confession, then it's less combative or what have you. And my confession rate is much, much higher.
Well, I noticed that on some of the podcasts that I've listened to, you'll say, okay, did you shoot that man?
Right.
And then your next question, did you shoot that man that night?
Right. You notice I don't say, did you kill that man?
Right.
Okay, the man's dead, right? But that kill is an emotion-evoking term. I try to make it as fair for them as I can. I can't ask him, did you go to the grocery store? That's not what we're there about.
Right.
And we've reviewed the questions in depth ahead of time. Actually, I tell them it's the easiest test you're ever going to take because you're going to help me make the questions. We're going to go over the questions and the answers ahead of time, and there'll be no surprise questions, right? So when I ask them that question, we've already gone over it numerous times that he's agreed to or they've agreed to it, and it doesn't come as a shock to them. Guess what? They know if they're going to lie before the test starts, right? They know when, but I mean, certainly they have as much, at that point in time, they don't have any real reason to just give it up. Who wants to give it up and just go to prison, right?
What is the biggest thing when you are giving a polygraph test to someone that you make sure you either do every time or avoid? Are there any like rules of thumb, or is that, I'm assuming the way I listen to your podcast, every case is different. Every case is unique.
Everyone is different. I always advise.
I remember one guy or seveble guys, you actually reached out and touched them and consoled them.
Absolutely, you have to
and stop the test.
Close the distance, and you just have to read them. What it goes off of, but you will always get their permission and tell them that they can stop at any time, right?
And then the Miranda rights. You said I'll go to McDonald's and read Miranda rights. I'm not going to be busted for that. What Oh boy, there's so much more, but I know you're pressed on time. But the podcasts, you are in season 10.
Started season 10.
Now, what is a season? How many is a season?
You know, that's just a Woodyism because I have no idea. I've never had a rhyme or reason, so when I cut them off, this last one, season 9, I couldn't even tell you how many episodes it was. I was like, hey, I need to start at season 10, but it just happened to morph into the direction that I'm changing Real Life Real Crime. I have a new producer in Vision Podcast Studios with Jim Chapman. I have new music by Chase Tyler, band the new intro and exit, and of course now I have a Cloud 10 Media and iHeartRadio. I have new shows coming out that totally separate than Real Life Real Crime, et cetera. So it just happened to be the right time to start season 10.
Well, you're unfortunately in the right place for it. What do you make of all this? I mean, I've been here since 1979. I have never seen the violent crimes as
That's crazy.
much as they are right now, not only here but around the world, but specifically speaking of our area. What do you make of that?
It's higher than I've ever seen, and I think it absolutely goes back to the way the culture, and I'm not, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, I don't care, whatever the culture or how society has come to view law enforcement in general, and that's the instant everybody has the camera, et cetera. And yes, those guys are out there. There's two kinds of cops in my book. The ones who need the badge to feel like a man, and the ones who do it because they love it. And the ones who need the badge to feel like a man, they're like this idiot that's got his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes. It's just totally uncalled for, right? But that's what gets sensationalized. You don't get the cop that's dealing with the people. You know, cops, when they deal with people, they're dealing generally on their worst day. Think about that. You get a 911 call, you're going to somebody out there, not for a good reason, right? So you don't ever get to see all the acts of kindness and people bending over backwards. And I used to tell the young guys, you don't have to go out of your way to try to fight somebody. There's going to be enough legitimate bad guys out there that are going to, you're going to have to fight regardless. If you can help somebody, help them, And I believe they're 98.5% of the cops are good, but that's not how it's portrayed. And certainly, we have cases, and some of them that were friends of mine, but that's what that do these horrible, unspeakable things, and that's what gets sensationalized, not nothing sells like murder, sex, and bad behavior, right? Especially from people in a position of authority. So it's out there. I think that over this past 20 years, the culture and society, the people have just, a lot more people have grown a disdain or dislike for law enforcement, where it didn't used to be that way. Mm-hmm. And I equate it to like this. My mother's an attorney also, right? And she was nowadays attorneys, and a lot of them are my good friends, and my whole family are full of attorneys, obviously. But she said, Woody, when we came out of law school, it was a thing of pride. You hang your shingle up saying, hey, attorney at law, right? And now attorneys are the butts of the jokes. It's kind of the same thing, but totally different in law enforcement, but it's just how society and culture has changed.
Wow, that's crazy. Do you see this getting better, worse, staying the same?
It's going downhill. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what people think is going to happen. One day, somebody asked me about running for sheriff or whatever. I said, you couldn't pay me enough money to do what these guys do now. And then even like, a recent case that I did on the podcast, but it was just bad work by these detectives, and they lied. And I was able to prove that, and then they were able to go out and make the arrests, et cetera. And then I'm the one having to put them on blast. And that certainly doesn't help the rest of them, but then I thank them after they made the arrests. I thank the powers that be. I'm like, thank God y'all stepped up and did your job, right? And kudos for that. But I can't see, how's it going to get any better? What's going to happen, though, one day when you can't pay them enough, and there's not a young Woody Overton who wants to be a cop when he grows up, and people are like, cops? No way.
Why would you want to be a cop today?
And they were talking about, we'll do away with the police and let's send in social workers to the shootouts. And let me know how that works out for you.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the paramedic bowed up to you at one point.
Yeah.
What was your badge number?
Yeah. He bowed up. He wanted Russ's badge number.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you put that one on me.
Yeah, but if you're asking the cop for the badge
Right.
number, you've got his name right
you know
there.
what it is.
They're just
Right,
harassing
right,
at that
right.
point.
And well, he knew too that Russ was a rookie at the time, but.
I don't want to get out of here without talking about LOPA and talking about some of the things you're involved in, and let you have the floor for the next few minutes to just kind of promote anything that you've got coming up that we
I would just say,
may
first of all, thank you to all my fans around the world. Last time I counted, it was 167 countries, and you know, won.
Wait, I'll just skim over that.
I didn't know-
167 countries.
I didn't even know there were 167 countries in the world, and that's to be honest with you. So and I quit counting at that. So, but I want to thank all of them. I call them lifers, affectionately, to play on words. So, for sharing and helping me grow, and winning People's Choice Podcast Year Award for Drama and Storytelling at 5 months old. 1 year, I had 1 million listeners. 2 years, I had 3 million listeners. 3 years, I've got 10 million listeners, and it's all grown by word of mouth. I want to thank Cloud 10 Media and iHeartRadio that picked me up the day before Hurricane Ida destroyed my home. But the fans are making it happen. Like your friend who's like, Johnny, you got to listen. Kim Warnett, Johnny, you got to listen, right? So thank you to them. Justice for Courtney Coco, this cold case we solved using the fans. That trial's on August 8th. That's this band I wear, and I'll never take it off. Her mama gave it to me. Justice for Miss Barbara Blunt is her 14-year murderversary is what I call it. The day she went missing is coming up in May. So y'all please continue to call any tips on that. No tip is too small. And then, of course, Justice for Mary, the most recent one we did, had success in West Baton Rouge. But patron members, convicts, we're the only true crime show in the world that has its own dedicated app now in the App Store. There are other true crime shows that have apps together, so we were fortunate enough and blessed enough to have that. I have all these social media pages, all these like 6 different Facebook pages, and Instagram, which is at Real Life Real Crime or at Overton Woody. YouTube now is our new thing we're kicking off with season 10. Have all these different things, but the app brings it all home in one place, and it's so much more than just social media. There's everything from games to daily crime facts to whatever. So if y'all get a chance, check that out. It's Real Life Real Crime Community app in the App Store. It's free. But I'm going there now. I spend so much time, Johnny, every day, and that's all I do from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. And other people were like, "Oh, you're gonna have to hire somebody to act like that's you." And I'm like, the day I can't answer my fans or the lifers is the day I quit doing it, right? But so it brings everything into one spot. It's much easier for me to do that. So if y'all get a chance, check that out. But more importantly, I want to talk about just real quick that on April the 5th, I'm launching a new podcast called Scorched Justice, and it's iHeartRadio, Cloud 10 Media. And it's totally different than Real Life Real Crime. It's the big show production, which I think it is another attraction for Real Life Real Crime. I don't have all the fancy background music, et cetera, and all that stuff, the big show production. iHeartRadio, Cloud 10 have put up for me to do this show where I'm going nationally and studying these big messed up cases and giving my own spin on it. And the first one I'm doing are the murders of Jessica Lynn Chambers, and I call her Mandy. It's hard to say her name. She's Taiwanese. But this was a case out of North Mississippi. And anyway, that series has been recorded. It's going to be released on April 5th. Scorched Justice. Find it anywhere you can find a podcast. And it's totally different from Real Life Real Crime, but I think I was able to find out an angle that everybody's been missing on the case, okay? And then on top of that, because of the fact of the success we've had in the cold cases with Courtney Coco and constantly working Miss Barbara's case and now Mary Portia's case, I get requests from people every day, every single day from around the world that want me to look at their families' cases. These families that are hurting. And I said I wasn't doing it anymore because I never solved Miss Barbara's yet, right? I can't prove it anyway. But I told my wife I can't do it, and it takes too much out of me, emotionally, physically, and mentally. But then I took on Mary Poshay's case because my good friends kept saying, just talk to the family, just talk to the family. And finally I reached out. I was just going to placate them, maybe help them if I could, tell them which direction to go look in or whatever. Man, then I heard this family story, and then they sent me a picture. And this lady was supposed to not have a mark on her. They swore she'd never been touched, and she was just beat. And I'm looking at the picture, and I tell Lori Cash, I said, Lori, can I call you back? She said, yeah, and I get off the phone, I'm looking at it. Cindy comes in, and I showed her the picture. And I said, they said, the detective swore to God she'd never been touched. And she said, how can you not use your platform and your skill set as an investigator to help this family? And so I called her back, I took it, and thank God, they went from saying they would never be able to make an arrest in the case to they made 2 arrests in 1 week. But a lot of my fans, a lot of the lifers, don't want to hear these big, long investigative series, right? They just want the old cop stories. And I get that. That's what they signed up for. But a lot of them do more. And so I'm starting a new podcast, a spinoff Real Life Real Crime called #JusticeForBlank. And I'm going to pick one case at a time, whether I can solve it or not. I'm going to shine the light on these families' pain, put the human face on these victims, and if we can solve it, we get lucky and we can solve one using it's crowdsourcing. I didn't know that was such a term as that, but using the fans to help solve it, or stirring up the emotions and getting them to shine the public light on these cases that are forgotten or not touched for whatever reason. And it may be bad police work, it may be whatever. If I can just shine the spotlight on them, if we get lucky and we solve it, then that's awesome. If we don't, the worst case scenario is I get to, these families finally get a voice, and their family member gets to be spoken of and not just another statistic. So that's going to be #JusticeFor. And again, that's coming out the same day as Scorched Justice, April 5th. And that falls in because of the quarterly stuff with advertisers and stuff like that.
We had an event downtown 2 weeks ago that I was honored to get tickets to through your lovely wife. What is that event? How often do you have it? And talk a little about the Louisiana Organ Procurement.
Okay, so that was the 3rd annual Crew Bash, KREWE. That's a Louisiana play on words. And I started doing live shows right before COVID by accident. And, the ladies at the Livingston Parish Livingston Technology Center, I went out and spoke to the class, and they were like, hey, you want to use our auditorium and do a live show? I'm like, never really thought about it, but I guess I could do that. And they're like, you could sell tickets. And so we did it, and we sold out like in 30 minutes when we announced it for the first night. So I was like, can I have it Friday night? They said, yeah. We sold out within an hour. I said, can I have it Thursday night? We sold out in within a day, and I was like, okay, there's something here, right? And then, so I did the first Crew Bash, which was celebrate my 50th birthday, the 1 million downloads, winning the award and everything else. And then we did the second one. It was supposed to be on the 2nd anniversary of the release date, but COVID happened. But before COVID happened, I had scheduled a tour across the United States. I had Dallas, Texas, Houston, Chicago, even had a 4-city tour in Australia lined up, and COVID came. And House of Blues in New Orleans sold it out. I had to refund all the money. And it was but COVID shut it down. But you know what else COVID did for me? It allowed me to slow down, learn what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong, who was right for me, who was wrong for me, and be able to. And we're going to continue to grow phenomenally, obviously. So, but God does everything for a reason. But we just held the 3rd annual Crew Bash, and thank you for coming. I appreciate that. And of course, that was another double sellout, if you will. And we did a VIP event Friday night and the live show Saturday night. So less than 5% of any podcast ever makes a nickel. Less than 1% do live shows, and I've been blessed enough to do both.
And then the LOPA time.
LOPA is a Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. That's my heart. Back when I was working homicides, some of them, they were gunshot victims. Well, they're still alive on the machines, and I got to see LOPA and one girl's organs went to, I think, 5 different people. One of them being a neurosurgeon out of California, got her heart, and he's still alive to this day. So I wanted to use the platform for some good, all these listeners and everything else, and so I started doing LOPA, because people, if you sign up to be an organ donor, the chances that they're ever going to harvest or use, I don't know what the politically correct word is, Lori Steele would fuss at me about that, but the chance they're ever going to use you are very slim. But I mean, if they want to use my stuff, I'm going to be dead, I don't care, take it. And if I can help somebody else, let it help. And so we've been, last year we raised $8,000 for them for the second crew bash, and this year we raised over $21,000 by raffles. And I end every show explaining how you can be an organ donor. Even if you're not from Louisiana, you can go to lopa.org and sign up. It takes about 2 minutes. And just the other day, Lori messaged me, it was later at night, and she said, you need to go to your crew page and read what's going on. And I went, and I won't say their names yet, but a dad, this young couple, the wife had the baby, and the baby was brain dead, and LOPA came in and talked to him, and the long and short, they had the pictures of the beautiful baby and her little fingernails painted pink and everything, and they let her go for LOPA, and her heart, I think, I don't want to speak it totally, but her heart went, like 3 valves went to 3 other babies that saved lives. And the guy put it in the end, he said, Woody Overton, I just want to thank you, because I never would have known about LOPA had you not said it at the end of your show every time. So that is important. Y'all, if you can, please go to lopa.org, sign up to be an organ donor. It doesn't cost anything. Chances they ever use it,
yeah, Lori
slim.
Steele and I have had many conversations, as has Wendy Lipsy, who is a triple organ recipient and doing great right now. But a friend of mine that wouldn't put the heart on the license on the driver's license because he was afraid that, okay, if I'm near death, they're not going to resuscitate me. They don't even know. The paramedics, they don't know.
Right. And that's all a lot of misconceptions. But again, you know what? They're going to let me bleed out so they can have that's all not true. That's be logical. But the deal is, if you're going to be dead anyway, I mean, if you could be a hero, they do more than just organs. They do eyesight, and they do tissue studies.
Like you said, that one baby's heart saved 3 babies' lives.
Can you believe that?
That's
and the hope, I pray that we're touching lives like that in ways that we'll never know. And I don't ask to know about it. But I cried when a guy put that post, and I'll probably talk about it on the next week's episode on my show, but I cried, and I'm man enough to admit it. And God bless him and thank them for letting their baby be a hero.
How can we follow Woody Overton? How can we follow you with everything that you're doing? There's so much going on. Is there a website? Is there a Facebook page? Do you have a subscription fee? I mean, how do we do this?
I have all that.
Could you talk about your lifers? What is that?
Yeah, lifers is it's an affectionate term I give for my fans, like playing words like lifer, natural in the prison system means you're down for life. My fans, I put them up against anybody in the world. 2022, I was nominated for 4 People's Choice Awards. I made the finalists for all 4, and I won Best Male Host in the entire world of a podcast, People's Choice, this year. And it's because of my fans. There were over 4 million votes cast. That was before I had iHeartRadio and all this other stuff that's coming up. But I'm anywhere on social media. We have a website, realliferealcrime.com. We have the app, Real Life Real Crime Community app in the App Store. I had like 6 different Facebook pages. One of them is a private group, Real Life Real Crime Friends and Crew. It's 37,000 plus members, and I approve every single person that gets in there personally myself. But I keep getting censored. My Facebook, so that's one of the reasons I started the app. I don't like to be censored, Johnny. And
I didn't know Woody Overton could be censored.
Yeah, well, evidently Facebook thinks I can, but I'm not totally knocking them. But the things they censor it over, or like people are putting memes about stuff or whatever. And I mean, this is a private group about true crime. Now we have other pages like the Real Life Real Crime Lanyap page, which is where if you're a fan of the show, and you have something to post about that's not true crime, you can go in there and sell whatever you want to sell or talk about whatever, run a movie, I don't care. We have that. We have so many different pages, but again, in the app, we have the same thing now. The Lagniappe page, anywhere you can find it, and anywhere you listen to a podcast, Google Real Life, Real Crime or Woody Overton, and I'll pop up.
Where can we listen to the book?
Okay, so after I started the podcast, I actually went back and narrated the book for Audible, and so I think it's like audible.com or something like that, and you can Google me or go to Audible and search my name, Woody Overton, or Jesus Held Me, the book.
Man, you are an incredible individual. Your story is inspiring, and your podcasts are fascinating and scary, and some I won't listen to, but I got to tell you though, what would be the first one I listened to, and then like I said, was I Shot That Man, and then the two following that, thanks to Kim. But what would you suggest would be some a first one to listen to if someone has never heard your podcast?
That's a pretty good question, because I do a lot of serious ones about murders and stuff like that, but I do a lot of funny ones. Well, I say funny in the context of anybody got raped or murdered or whatever the story may be. Like Duty on the 4th is one night, me on duty, and there's parts of that that's funny. And I really don't know the real series, like cold cases would be Courtney Coco, or Mary Pocho's case, or Miss Barbara's case. The funny stuff could be anything from Witches of the East Side to, I don't know, you just have to go look and see. There's so much. They're all my babies. But they're all real life and real crime.
Oh my God, you're amazing.
And be warned, people. All right.
Be warned. He does it. Yeah, he does. Be warned.
Yeah.
Woody Overton, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Real life, real crime. Read this book. It's an ebook. Listen to the ebook, and then start following him on the social.
For my fans that are watching it live, tell them how they can follow Johnny Ahysen.
Oh yeah, well, the Ahysen Nation airs every Tuesday on our WAFB Plus, available on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Also our WAFB Facebook page, and these shows stay there. They're kind of archived there, but the live ones, we try to do a fresh one every Tuesday at 10 a.m. and feel free to hit me up with suggestions for some shows.
I know how you like your on-demand entertainment.
Oh, I got to tell you, when Kim told me about you, before she insisted that I listen to your first podcast, or the podcast, she said, I got a guy that you need to get on your show. And I'm like, who is this guy? I know the Overton family, yeah, but why? And when I started really kind of getting into who you were and what you were all about, I'm like, I don't know if I have enough time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate
we spent an hour and it didn't seem like 5 minutes to me.
Right. That's the best ones are the ones when it goes by that fast and you don't even remember what you talked about.
You are amazing, and thank you so much. Best of luck.
I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Woody Overton, everybody, on the Ahysen Nation. I'll see you tomorrow morning on 9 News This Morning. Have a great Tuesday.